Once again, I welcome you all to today's lesson, which is about the Malawi Agenda 2063. In this lesson, I will explain more on the development strategies for agriculture and extension as highlighted in this agenda. I hope you are all aware that the government of Malawi currently is implementing the Malawi Agenda 2063, which aims to transform Malawi into a wealth and self-industrialized upper middle income country by the year 2063. The agenda is anchored on the three pillars of agricultural productivity and commercialization, industrialization, as well as urbanization. The agenda also articulates the enablers that will propel this country towards achieving economic independence, inclusive wealth creation, self-reliance, and a high quality of life for all its citizens. Such enablers include mindset change, effective governance system, public sector performance, private sector dynamism, human capital development, human infrastructure, as well as environmental sustainability. In the past, we had the Malawi Vision 2020. So the Malawi 2063 is a successor to Vision 2020, which had the goal of Malawi as a country becoming secure, democratically mature, environmentally sustainable, self-reliant, with equal opportunities for and active participation by all, having social services, vibrant cultural and religious values, and a technologically driven middle income country by the year 2020. Vision 2020 was implemented in a challenging global and domestic environment to the effect that at its conclusion, Malawi still lags behind in realizing its development potential. So the Malawi 2063 builds on the lessons from the implementation of Vision 2020 but puts emphasis on getting things done. In global context, the Malawi 2063 is aligned to the Sustainable Development Goals, whose overall objective is to create a better and sustainable future for all. In a regional context, Malawi is integrated into regional, social, and economic policies, key being the Africa Union Agenda 2063 called the Africa We Want. The Malawi Agenda 2063 is a long-term development program with the goal of spurring inclusive growth and fighting poverty by the year 2063. This is Africa's blueprint and master plan for transforming the continent into the global powerhouse that it ought to be. Tapping on this aspiration, our vision is that of a Malawi that is shaped and driven by Malawians. Development partners will just play a supportive and collaborative role to the transformation of our nation. In this country, the vision has been developed at a time when the country has made progress in a number of areas. However, poverty has remained persistent over the years and remains the key challenge. For example, Malawi's annual GDP growth at an average of 4.1% in the past decade has been slow and lags far behind the regional and global trends. The transformation we need as a country is desired in two fronts. Firstly, our development narrative and mindset must change from focusing on poverty reduction to wealth creation. Secondly, we must transform the structure of our economy from predominantly importing to an industrialized exporting economy. Malawi, as a country, has for a long time pursued development policy based on imported paradigms that react to specific situations rather than proactively addressing specific problems that the country faces. The agenda stresses that Malawi shall master courage and booster confidence and began to believe in her own ideas and homegrown solutions to community and national level problems. As already said, Malawi 2063 is anchored on the three pillars of agriculture productivity and commercialization, industrialization, as well as urbanization. So, no pillar is an island in these flagship projects. For each of the pillars be designed and implemented in the context of an ecosystem approach. So, for the purpose of this course, the focus will be on pillar number 1, which is agriculture productivity and commercialization, whereby we'll look at the development plans for agriculture and extension as articulated in the agenda. We all know that the Malawi economy is currently predominated by the agriculture sector for its foreign exchange earnings. More importantly, almost close to 80% of the population rely on land-fed smallholder agriculture for their livelihoods. But production and productivity of the sector has remained below the country's potential and is sufficient to match the increasing demand from domestic and export markets. And several factors have contributed to this, such as high environmental degradation, increasing adverse climatic conditions, low adoption of climate-smart agricultural technologies by our smallholder farmers, and most of you can agree with me that this is indeed a challenge. Talk of low access to land is also a problem, low access to farm inputs, low mechanization, poor land management practices, poor access to finance is a challenge, poor linkages to markets, prolonged politicization of maize, high dependence on tobacco for export earnings, and many other factors. Despite these challenges, there are several chances for enhancing agriculture productivity and productivity to characterize the realization of the Vision 2063 of inclusive wealth creation and self-reliance, such as an enabling and supportive policy environment, endowment of natural resources, availability of developed technologies that are ready for scaling up, existence of some basic irrigation infrastructures in some parts of the country, existence of well-organized extension delivery systems, a youthful population, and existence of supportive government and development partners. The transformation of the agri sector is central to the achievement of the Vision 2063, not only for the welfare of citizens, but also given that the linkage between the sector and industry would spur socio-economic development. I've already said that no pillar is an island in this agenda. So industrial development as pillar number 2 will not be progressive unless agriculture is innovative and productive. The transformation will require a shift from low productivity and subsistence-oriented agriculture to a highly productive and commercialized agri-system with manufacturing linkages. This will attract investment in value addition and agro-processing, resulting in the creation of employment for wealth and ultimately economic self-reliance both as a nation and among our people. A rise in agriculture production and productivity above the subsistence requirement will result in an increase in the volume of marketable surplus, thereby propelling industrialization. In terms of agriculture productivity, the agenda stresses that improved agricultural productivity and well-functioning structured agricultural markets can transform the sector to generate income, release agricultural labor, and stimulate demand in other sectors. Improving agricultural productivity will therefore have an immediate effect on the dynamics of poverty and hunger in at least four important ways. First of all, it will increase the production and incomes of the majority of people who primarily work in agriculture. Secondly, it will attract young people to the agriculture sector. It will reduce food prices, which affect real income and poverty in urban areas, while generating important spillovers to the rest of the economy, and intensify the use of productivity enhancing research and technologies, thereby achieving greater output per livestock and unit of land used and producing larger farm surpluses. To implement transformation strategies, the agenda stresses that the government spending on agriculture will move away from a bias of subsidies for maize inputs and procurement as it significantly undermines such efforts. There will be a clear distinction between programs that enhance agricultural productivity through provision of subsidies to resource-poor farmers and the provision of subsidies as safety nets to vulnerable households. Where subsidies are used, they will be targeted and only given as catalysts mostly for enhancing productivity of agricultural initiatives related to farm activities, anchor farm or farms or cooperatives that best define the potential wealth that can be harnessed in a particular region to optimize the outcome of the subsidy. To make agriculture attractive to young people, the agenda stresses on increased mechanization and use of technology backed by effective extension services. The ultimate goal of self-reliance at the household, community, and national levels will guide the design of all subsidy programs that are adopted and implemented in this country. Graduation and exit mechanisms with the aim of achieving the desired goals of national food security and agricultural commercialization will be clearly defined. Complementary to agricultural productivity, the agenda stresses on building on existing efforts and embark on a progressive and extensive agricultural commercialization program to boost incomes and spur economic growth. Beyond focusing on crops that guarantee food security such as maize, emphasis will also be on strategic crops, livestock, and fisheries that will yield high income in the local, regional, and international markets. The commercialization of the agri sector will mainly target the youth with the purpose of encouraging rural economic growth towards greater urbanization. In addition to improved productivity, increased income, and entrepreneurial attraction, the drive to commercialize the agriculture sector will be undertaken to guarantee that every household in Malawi is food secure and the dietary needs and quality are diversified and improved with the surplus feeding the industry. The agenda stresses to improve the provision of information on markets, prices, and related regulations for local, regional, and international markets. Malawi 2063 agenda stresses to have an agricultural development and market entity running on commercial principles, monitoring the commercialization of agriculture and providing local and international structured market linkages to farmers. The parastatals to operate under a strong alliance with the private sector in a transparent and accountable manner and independent of political interference. To improve agricultural productivity and commercialization, the agenda stresses on improved and sustainable land management practices, optimal utilization of land resources, climate smart and resilient agriculture, diversification of the agrarian sector, increased use of modern technologies and farm mechanization, access to targeted agriculture insurance, and the development of an agricultural finance policy. Let's look at the improved and sustainable land management practices. In order to ensure sustainable land management, the agenda stresses that it will promote sustainable land management practices such as conservation agriculture, soil and water conservation, soil fertility improvement, and improve area under agroforestry. The sustainability of land management and investment approaches will be underpinned by a strong land tenure systems, as it is recognized that improving agricultural productivity and commercialization require the strategic transformation of land tenure systems, including the laws and regulations governing land acquisition, ownership, and utilization. This will entail revisiting land laws in order to provide ceilings to land holdings and its usage, enable fit-for-purpose land redistribution, and target productive but landless farmers, and ensure inclusivity in transformative approaches to agriculture. On optimal utilization of land resources, the agenda stresses that land resources such as soils, forestry, vegetative cover, and minerals, among others, will be mapped. This will help determine optimal utility and allocation of the resources to those with the capacity and ability to productively use such resources in generating wealth for sustaining the country's economy and the livelihoods of the people. The agenda also stresses on the promotion of climate smart technologies and practices in the sector. And this will be given a priority, as it is recognized that increasingly variable and adverse climatic conditions continue to affect the rain-fed agrarian system. So, broad investment in sustainable irrigation systems and technologies, as well as approaches to averting adverse climatic variability, will be prioritized. New technologies and expertise will be required to ensure sustained and resilient productivity. Affordable and consumer-oriented agricultural insurance for smallholder farmers will also be scaled up. To promote the agenda for a transformative agrarian sector that is smart and resilient to climate change, the Malawi 2063 stresses that it is imperative that production goes beyond maize for food security and tobacco as a main cash crop, as a focus on limited and lower value crops exposes smallholder farmers to external shocks such as adverse weather, and shifts in global demand. Estate farmers who are primarily focused on sugar and tea are also subjected to similar shocks. So, agriculture and trade policies will support farmers to engage in production where there is the best return for their inputs and investment, and production will switch to higher value crops and livestock for export market. Given that agriculture is labor intensive, this will be vital for both job creation and income generation. Subsequently, this will contribute towards the realization of the aspiration of inclusive wealth creation and self-reliance. This is particularly true for the rural population, which is predominantly employed in the agriculture sector. It is emphasized in this vision that farmers will have better access to input and market information, finance, infrastructure, and market linkages to potential buyers, thereby enhancing their profitability. Transforming from a highly subsistent to a commercially oriented agri-system require financial and technical investment. To this end, Malawi 2063 stresses that government will try to address access to finance barriers, enable banks and financial institutions to promote the expansion and productivity of large commercial farms and cooperatives, and attract young people to the agriculture sector through the provision of capital. This will in turn enhance access to and use of modern technologies and equipment. Existing large commercial farms and cooperatives will also be supported and strengthened, as these are powerful vehicles through which modernization and farming to increase productivity for both sustenance and industrial processes will be achieved. Agriculture insurance, particularly for large commercial farms and cooperatives, will be introduced in order to cushion them from losses due to internal and external market failures, with the purpose to spur markets linked production. This will be done by removing any constraints that prevent private sector commercial insurers from entering the market. Agriculture finance policy will also be developed, that is to aid commercialization efforts, and the agricultural credit facility will be revitalized in order to fund all levels of the agriculture value chains. Additionally, the Malawi Stock Exchange will be supported to complete the development of a commodity future segment in addition to equities and bonds. So, as extension experts, you need to recognize and think of your roles and responsibilities in order to make this happen. Thank you for your attention.